Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Spud. Hard to choose because the whole album is what makes this song stand out like it does. It's a prog black metal avant-garde Austrian band which you won't hear much of in this song, but trust, it is as weird, positively weird, as that. Have fun. Black metal and have fun. Name a better combination for a request. We are going to check out the band Dornenreich. The track is Innerwille ist Docht. Let's dive in. See what's going on with this avant-garde black metal stuff. I like those really quick, what I would call trills on a woodwind instrument. Really quick hammer on and pull off the 16th notes. I was just commenting on the wind sample. This guy starts whispering in my ear. So much anticipation. Ooh, a timpani. I think they're just toms. Lots of twanginess in here. Chirping. All these little fine textures from playing the guitar. The drum part is incredibly interesting too.
Öffnete jenes Schloss zu meinem Innerwillen, so ihn nötiger spürte. Denn auch die eine Tür birgt ihre Freude, doch nur die Flagge. Ein Moment, meine größte Mut ist meine Wärme.
Oh.
Mein Mut ist meine Flamme. Im Willen blitzt die Leidenschaft.
Why does it feel like acoustic grunge?
Mein Innerwille liebt mich einzig
The violin adds a lot.
meine Möglichkeit. Und wo eine Wahl zerfresse,
Really interesting time control too.
lässt dem Moment Lebendigkeit. So leb ich trennende Wirklichkeit. Mein Innerwille ist mein Docht, mein Mut ist meine Flamme. Im Willen blitzt die Leidenschaft. Liebe ist das
Okay. I am quite intrigued. I like knowing that this track works better in the album because by itself, I don't think it's an incredibly strong track, but it does raise a lot of curiosity within. I think there's some cool ideas here, and I'd love to hear how it fits within an album pacing or maybe within a different style of music. I mean, the whole album could be this, but given that they're avant-garde black metal, I'm going to assume that the rest of the album is heavier, maybe a little more metallic. And so I think I'm a little underwhelmed by the track, but curious about the artist. Now, that's not to say that this song isn't interesting, and I have some cool things to bring up, and I enjoyed my time with it. But I understand the apprehension of selecting it, knowing that it's best listened to within a specific context that, in my case, I'm devoid of. The first thing I want to touch on, though, being that it's the most recent, the temporal stuff at the end of this track, I finally got a handle on it closer to the end. The sped up part is actually a double time plus an extension. So we have that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 that permeates pretty much all of this track, but is a really key element here in those final moments. And then the song speeds up. This is a perfect doubling of it. If you take that slower 1, 2, 3 and just do it twice as fast, you're going to line up perfectly here. If you stick with that 3, it almost lines up perfectly. There's a fourth beat in there. So it shifts to 4/4 at double time. That's what's going on there. What I find interesting though is that there's also moments of slowing down. These seem to be less pattern based. The 4 bars of double time is pretty consistent. It's every 16 bars. We'll hit that. But the slowing down, I never quite found a pattern for. And for that reason, I think it was actually more what I would classify as a mistake more than anything, a temporal looseness to the track where the drummer drags for just a moment. And as far as I could tell, it was always the drums. It was a bass kick a little bit behind where I would expect the beat to be. Everything locks back in on the next beat or two. So it isn't anything that's highly disruptive, but it is something that feels, I think it's impossible to ignore, given that we also have the speed up, and it creates so much tempo fluctuation in the ending here, where we have a static tempo, what we expect the song to be, and at times it dips below that, and then in a pattern we always have an acceleration of that, and it just makes the whole thing feel very loose, like something you can't control. Songs are, for the most part, fairly predictable. Music as a whole, I mean, this is obviously labeled as avant-garde black metal. They are more likely to chuck convention out the window and do what they want. But conventionally speaking, a lot of music kind of just keeps a tempo for a majority of the track, or at least the majority of a section. Maybe the chorus is faster than a verse. This quite frequently happens in pop, where we have a 5 to 10 BPM increase, something that's a little less noticeable by most people, but is absolutely felt as more energetic. But as far as wide sweeping, immediately noticeable tempo changes, that's usually relegated to prog circles, whether that's progressive pop or prog rock or tech death or something like that. Songs tend to be comforting. You have expectations for what a song does, and it follows through with those. This song slipping down at times, then increasing at other times, makes it feel wild. And I think I was going to use the word feral, and I think the only reason is because of the vocals, which also feel fairly unpredictable to me, but also very inhuman in an interesting way, more Golem-esque, to use a pop culture icon there. Black metal vocals are kind of inhuman to begin with, but a lot of that is higher pitched harshes, shrieks, and screams. This is a raspy, airy whisper. So, similarly described, but very different from what I would expect. But the music does end up feeling unpredictable. However, you might envision that it takes a while to get to understand its flow, which is very different from traditional ideas, which is here's our tempo, this is where we're going to be for a while. This tempo is always in flux. So I find that to be a really key part of the end of this track. I don't hear too much tempo fluctuation prior to this point, but it is a massive element of the ending. Now, atmospherically, a lot of this track is lonely. Isolating might be a good word for it. I've been trying to figure it out while I was listening to it, and ever since then as well. There's very minimal information to go off of. We have these big swells. There's one at the beginning as we have these layers of echoed compression, maybe white noise layered on top of one another, and then muffled somehow. I don't know, it's a rising sound that's accompanied with the tom fill. It feels ominous. There is also the end of this track once the violins come in, when some of that darkness creeps back in. But aside from these two moments, a lot of this track is just vocals and guitar. Eventually a little bit of drum work, where the drum work doesn't really add much to the harmonic information. And so with the guitar as sparse as it is, the vocals not being pitched really, and the drums not being pitched, there's just not a lot of information to pull. So the best I can get is more of an atmospheric, a textural reading of it, in which case, yeah, it's just kind of lonely. It's very isolating. There's not a lot going on. It's incredibly minimal. And the whispers only add to a type of intimacy, maybe a vulnerability to the track. The vocals being whispers throughout makes everything feel so loud, accompanying it. It is a really interesting effect that, as little layers as there are in this track, as quiet as most of this song is, you could have checked the volume bars on the left of the album art. And we were nowhere near full volume for a majority of this track. Very quiet. And the whispers add to that atmosphere. It feels like we've entered a cave and there's some random guy with a guitar just kind of plucking some strings every once in a while, and someone whispering to us very quietly. And that's about it. The vulnerability, the intimacy of it all is what this song is about. But there is also the darkness to it. That swell up at the beginning is incredibly powerful. The violin holding out the note at the end of this track, the first time it's introduced, and it just gets louder and louder, this crescendo of sound before we push into a dreary, melancholic, possibly violin melody that accompanies all of this. It takes something that felt vulnerable and isolating previously and adds a sad touch to it. I do believe that by the end of the track, we find some sort of small victory. I was going to use the word triumph, but I think that that implies too large of a reaction, too large of a feeling. An overcoming of something, maybe at best. I think that the dreariness is still present, it's just lesser so. I don't know what to make of this track so far. I don't know what it's trying to tell me. I hope the lyrics will lead me towards some sort of narrative conclusion on this song. All I can really say at this point is what I've picked up. We have wind and very, very light guitar work. Makes it feel like we're entering somewhere. The wind stops and then we are whispered to. And this is vulnerable and quiet. It's like we have found this creature in a cave, and then the dreariness kicks in. And that takes us to the end, which feels slightly more optimistic than it started, but it's not a drastic emotional change. In a lot of ways, it really just does feel like we came upon this person, this creature maybe, and they told us a story in a cave. That's kind of it. It's very theatric, and I think that's why it's so easy for me to picture a story to this, a visual component to the music itself. But I also think that it's interesting because it is theatric, but it's also incredibly minimal from the musical side of things, which might be another thing that pushes me to try to find a visual meaning to this too, where the music is speaking through a lack of rather than a plenty of. I think that's it. I mean, what else is there? The drum, I did enjoy the drum work. The drums eventually locked into a very consistent pattern about halfway into this track, but when they were first introduced, there was some very neat, albeit sparse, which works well with the isolating sounds in general from the guitar, but melodic drumming. There didn't seem to be a pattern to it. The drummer was just doing some cool minimal stuff. Couple hits here, couple hits there, just anything to sell this atmosphere more so than be a human metronome. So, very cool idea overall. Let me hit some lyrics on this one. All right, the song is in German. I'm using machine translation, unfortunately. Talks about a pale, eerie, flickering door with a blazing lock on it. It says, no fear can open you. You are the other possibility, though, and I sense you're important. You demand courage, for courage trusts in what is right. Courage is my key. Sticking with this metaphor of this locked door. It says, courage opens every lock to my inner will. Okay. A really cool start here. As I was reading this, I was locked in. I wasn't even trying to understand it. Like, technically, I was just understanding it on a gut level. I was like, I gotta read all of this, because this is poetic, dude. This is phenomenal. He says, "For even that one door, it holds all of my joy and all of my happiness. But the moment to choose to open it is my greatest choice. And only when a moment is mine without choice will I open it. Until then, it remains locked." This is a really interesting line. Basically, it says that courage can open his inner will, and that together it will be a force of positivity within himself. But he refuses to do that until he needs to, until he has no other choices. He says, "But when my inner will is unlocked, my life will be truly free and fully enjoyed. My inner will live with me alone. It grants the moment's vitality so that I can live a tearful reality." That tearful reality line is interesting. I wonder if it's tears of joy or sorrow. I assume joy, giving the connotations of all of this, but also the feeling of using your inner will as a last resort and needing courage to unlock that. I wonder if it talks about then a resiliency to explore life, a fear of having a will of goals, how much easier it is to just live life complacently. That the only way this person would take the reins on their life and have an inner will and create goals and chase them is if it's their last resort, if they've been pushed to that brink. I really like that idea, actually. I think a lot of people find a groove with life, and maybe it's not exactly what they wanted to do in life, but it works. It pays the bills, keeps a roof over their head. It's not always what they thought they were going to do. Their dreams, they sit on the back burner. I'll get to them eventually. I just need stability in life. It takes real courage to take that leap. I think that's what this song is about. It ends saying that my inner will is my wick and my courage is my flames. Life is the name of this burning. So the wick of a candle, having the courage to light that and using that to light your way through life. Life becomes the burning of the candle. Absolutely beautiful track. Maybe that's what the sparseness of the composition is supposed to represent, an emptiness in life. Looking for purpose, looking for meaning, but too afraid to really dive into that, to look for that purpose, to chase your dreams and goals, to have that inner will and the courage to unlock it. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Love this. These are my thoughts on Dornenreich's Innerwille ist mein Docht. Let me know what you thought of this. Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Let me know. Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.